What up? I'm Jake Palumbo, and this is How to Be Rich When You're Not Famous.
I'm Jake Palumbo. I'm a scrub from Tennessee who moved to New York City 12 years ago with about as much chance of making it in the music industry as a farmer has trying to grow corn in Afghanistan. I'm just like you. I had no money, no connects in the music industry. The difference between me and my peers who were trying to break in at the same time is I didn't quit like a little bitch. Instead, I set out to decode the codes and to build my little dirt empire one brick at a time. Since the front door to the music industry was locked, I decided I was gonna find a way to break in through the back window. In 2018, I'm still not famous, but I am happy to report that I'm a few months shy of a decade of surviving off just my career as a producer, engineer, and artist. I'd like to share with you some of the things I've learned, as well as my core philosophies, as well as have an outlet to vent so I don't strangle somebody to death. I'm Jake Palumbo, and this is How to Be Rich When You're Not Famous.
Another one of my favorite movies is The Shawshank Redemption. You know, in the movie, Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, you know, endures a long prison sentence for a crime he didn't commit, but ever so slowly finds a way to escape the prison. And at the end of it, after 20 years of little work, day by day by day by day, he finally breaks out of the prison. But once he breaks out of prison, in order to get to freedom and safety, he has to swim through a 2-mile sewage pipe of nothing but, you know, fecal matter for all intents and purposes. And that's kind of a metaphor for the music industry, is after hollowing away at it for as many years as it's going to take you hollowing away at it, I mean, unless you're blessed with money or a budget, you know, which most of us are not, it's going to take you years of hollowing away at it. And then when you finally get to where you can escape the prison, you're still going to have to swim through 2 miles of shit to actually get to the other side. I have to inconvenience myself on a pretty regular basis for the sake of getting the job done. Now, this can come in a variety of different formats and packages, you know, but they all add up to the same unexpected curveball that, you know, while it might be minor if it's not addressed, it may derail what we're trying to do. The tenacity required is not just a willingness to pick up the slack for the shortcomings of others when you have to. It's also a matter of how hard are you willing to push yourself? What personal inconveniences are you willing to go through in order to see the job to completion? When you're an independent artist, you have to sacrifice money. You know, studio time costs money, mixing costs money, shooting a music video costs money. You know, there's expenses involved with touring, you know, making your own merchandise costs money. You're investing your time, you know, the time spent writing, recording, promoting yourself. You know, you're sacrificing time away from loved ones. You know, some of you have kids. You know, you're sacrificing your leisure time, your weekends, you know, your sports, your video games, you know, meth, whatever you're into on the weekends, you know, that you would normally do for leisure time. Any successful independent artist that gets anywhere is willing to sacrifice most of that. Now, in a future video, we will get into not sacrificing all of that and why it is important to keep some of those things close to you in your life so you don't go insane, because the music business will drive you insane. Because the music business is such a crapshoot, because there are so many factors other than your talent and your work ethic, and because there's no retirement in the music business, because there's no 401k in the music business, because there's no health insurance in the music business, because there's all these things that, you know, normal employed people enjoy and oftentimes take for granted that we don't get access to unless we fund them ourselves, because going from an amateur hobbyist artist to a person who lives and pays bills as an artist, because that is such a long, winding, rough, draining, exhausting road that, you know, for most people takes about a decade. Because that is such a long and winding road, I would implore you to ask of yourself, how bad do you want this? And what are you really willing to put yourself through in order to get there? In order to put yourself ahead in the line of the rat race of the 4 million other people who are trying to do the same thing that you're doing. When I say this, I'm not suggesting in any way that you should let people step on you, take advantage of you. You know, if anybody knows me, they know I'm the exact opposite of that, and I have no problem speaking up. But there's a difference in people taking advantage of you and you being willing to inconvenience yourself and pick up the slack in order to see to it that the job is done. And those are the qualities and marks of a real leader.
What's up, guys? If you've got a question that you would like answered in a future episode for our mail call segments, you can email jakepalumbo@gmail.com.
But I want to leave you with a story that happened to me not that long ago, a little less than 2 years ago. It was December 2016. I had just released Jake It Till You Make It, my most recent solo album. I had gotten a call from my man DJ NUT, who is a radio DJ up at WKVR, I think is the radio station. It's an FM radio station at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Shout out to DJ NUT, man, great DJ, and he's, you know, supported the music for a long time. So because the album had just came out, he called and asked did I want to come make an appearance and do an interview and freestyle on that weekend's radio show. And I said, sure, absolutely, because I'm of the opinion that, you know, because it's so hard to get booked, when somebody wants to book me for something, you know, if it's within my reach, now if it's on the other side of the country, then okay, we have to talk travel arrangements. But if it's within reach, and Poughkeepsie, New York is 1 to 2 hours upstate, you know, if it's within reach, I feel it is my duty to do it. If these people are reaching out to book me as an independent artist who has to work for every bit of press that I get, it's my responsibility to take it, okay? Leading up to the radio show, I reached out to all my homies who had whips and, you know, was talking about, hey, can we get a ride to the radio station? Now, mind you, I was not asking them to drive me. I was paying them to drive me. I was offering them money, because if you watch episode 2 of How to Be Rich When You're Not Famous, I talk about why I don't ask for favors. So I understand going to Poughkeepsie, New York is a little bit out of the way. Oh, and I forgot one important detail. The radio show is from 12 midnight to 2 in the morning. So when I start going to all my friends, like, hey, you know, can I throw you this bread to drive me to the radio station? Now, most of these friends rap also, and, you know, could potentially benefit from being at the radio and meeting the DJ, and, you know, if they were on their game, could have taken advantage of the networking opportunity and even gotten their music played on FM radio. But naturally, human nature, one by one, you know, everybody I'm reaching out to asking if they could give me a ride to the radio station, they're like, oh, it's where? At what time? Yo, you know, I fucks with you, bro, man. And all of a sudden, you know, I had 7 or 8 potential rides up there lined up. And as I start going down the list, it becomes clear that nobody is either able or interested in giving me a ride to Poughkeepsie, because on a Saturday night, driving 2 hours upstate to be on a radio show that airs from midnight to 2 a.m., you know, I don't know. Me personally, if I was getting bread for it and it was an opportunity to get my music out to people that I wouldn't have otherwise, because, you know, I could be introduced by people who know each other, I personally would have done it. But, you know, not everyone is me. So the day comes of the radio show, and I'm a man of my word. Like, if I say I'm going to be there and I've committed myself to being there and I've advertised that I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there, rain or shine. So what happens? I had to bite the bullet. I went to Grand Central Station. I paid $15 or whatever it was for a train ticket to Poughkeepsie. When I got to Poughkeepsie, I spent about another $10 on a cab ride to get to the radio station, which is on Vassar College campus. We have a good show. It's cool. Everything went great. Mission accomplished. Now, when the show's over, DJ NUT very graciously said, hey man, do you want me to give you a ride back to the train station? I said, thanks bro, I really appreciate that. He gives me a ride back to the train station. We say our goodbyes, salute, and I walk to the train station. I walk into the train station to be greeted with the news that because it is now 2:30 a.m., the next train to take me back to New York City where I live is at 5 a.m. Okay, well, there's a bar next to the train station. Maybe I'll go in there and have a drink. Oh wait, it's last call. I take a walk around downtown Poughkeepsie and put one in the air, and suddenly realize that, you know, I should probably go back to the train station. So I go back to the train station, and I don't know if you've ever been to the train station at Poughkeepsie, but it's covered, but it's not indoors, if that makes sense. Like, you know, there's a platform and a roof over you, but you're sitting in whatever the weather is outside, and it was December, and by proxy it was freezing. So I'm sitting on the platform, it's freezing, I'm actually shivering, I'm sitting here like this, but my body is like kind of jerking because it's cold outside. I mean, 12 years in New York, I'm still a giant baby when it comes to the cold, but I think any normal human would have been freezing outside, you know, sitting in it for too long. So I have 2 hours to kill and absolutely nowhere to go. And I don't know if you've ever had to pass time shivering for 2 hours, but it's the longest, it's the longest, most miserable, you know, water torture that there is on Earth. And you have nothing but your own thoughts the entire time. When I came to the realization that as a grown adult, like over 30, having done this rap stuff for a decade at that point, and having got to a point where I was making a living and had worked with artists I had dreamed of and had my own studio and, you know, was doing well but was still an unknown for the most part. After all that time, after all the failures, after all the heartbreaks, after all the disappointment, after the thousands of dollars of being ripped off, like, you know, after putting out stuff that didn't sell, after people around you trying to scoff that what you do is not real work, you know, the time sacrifice, the relationship sacrifice, the leisure sacrificed, you know, after all the fuckery that, you know, you've been through, the fact of the matter is that you're still willing to sit on the platform and shiver and not complain about it for the sake of honoring your obligations, of spreading the word of your music, of hopefully exposing yourself to at least one new fan, and the experience of saying that you did it. When I finally rolled into my actual apartment at 7 a.m. the next morning, yeah, I was pretty beat down and exhausted, and I looked haggard, but I would rather be worn out and beat from putting effort into doing what I love than because, you know, I hate my day-to-day job, you know. We're looking for signs, for feedback, for reciprocation that all this hard work and sacrifice that we put into it, you know, is worth it, is all going to make sense one day. Now, the aftermath to this story, when I was calling around trying to get a ride to the radio station that night, you know, it was said to me a couple times by a couple people, like, yo, damn, Jake, like, I'm with it, but, like, you know, who you think's really listening to the radio at, you know, at 12 midnight, 1 in the morning on Saturday night? To which, when they said that at the time, I'm like, I don't know, but somebody might be listening. And I would like that somebody to know who I am. So, and especially if this show's playing my music and want to book me, I need to be there. So, I don't know who's listening, but somebody listening, and I'm going to go shoot my shot as an artist with whoever's listening. So it turns out somebody does listen to the show, because there was one person in particular, Steve, what up, who sent me a DM on Instagram that night because he had never heard of my music and he heard it on the show and said he liked it, and he went out and bought Jake It Till You Make It on iTunes that very evening. So I made my little $8-10 right there, but then that same guy went back and bought like 4 or 5 other albums, and then when I started selling t-shirts, he bought 2 t-shirts. So that's $100 in music and merchandise that I sold to this one fan because I spent the 25 bucks and the inconvenience of all that time and travel to go to the radio show. And I'm grown. Y'all are younger than me. You're supposed to have more energy. How are you letting this old ass man outwork you? I don't know. I'm being facetious, but I'm also dead serious. But I say this to say, you just have to question how bad do you really want this. I'm not a fan of tooting my own horn, because most of the people I've met in my lifetime that I do consider greats are very humble and tend to downplay their own accomplishments. And usually the people who always talking highly of themselves are usually the people that ain't doing shit. But that night, as I sat shivering on the platform, I had to look myself in the face. I had to look myself in the metaphorical mirror and say, that's why you're going to make it, Jake. Because you're willing to sit and shiver on this platform as a grown-ass man for the sake of spreading the word about who you are and what you do. And most of your peers are not. In future episodes, we'll get into some of the other crazy stuff I've done in the past, sleeping on the floor of the Baltimore bus station. I've got all types of stories from around the country in my, blue-collar DIY pursuit of indie rap F-list stardom. We'll get into some of those in a future episode, but I just say that to say the willingness to inconvenience myself and my willingness to eat the cost, whatever it is, whether it's my time, my sweat, my tears, my sacrifice, my money, whatever it is, I'm willing to do it. And if you really want this, you're going to have to be willing to do it too. The only way that you're going to get around that is if you have money to hire people to connect these other dots for you. And most of us don't have that luxury, which is why you're tuned in to How to Be Rich When You're Not Famous, and why I made this show to begin with. Because like most of us, for maybe 2% of the people that get into music, they're going to have that nice, easy ride. For most of us, it is a very long, tough stretch. So think about that. Ask yourself, are you willing to shiver on the platform in whatever format that means in your life and music life and your career? Less talented people who want it more are always going to get farther than more talented people who don't want it as bad. Alright? I've talked your ear off. Feel free to leave a comment as long as it's not stupid. Hit that subscribe button and we will see you next week.